The cold pavement bit into the soles of her feet. Jane did not feel it at first, only the wind. It howled through the narrow alley like a ghost chasing her name. Her breath came in broken gulps, each one heavier than the last. Blood from her temple had dried into a line down her cheek. Her hair clung to her skin, matted and soaked with sweat, tears, and something darker. She had run, barefoot, half-dressed, through 6 city blocks, past glowing street lamps and blinking traffic lights, without a destination, without a plan. Only the primal instinct to survive remained. She crouched behind a concrete wall next to a dumpster, chest heaving. Her hands trembled, still sticky from the shattered glass she'd gripped when she'd fought back. Somewhere in the distance, car horns cried like alarm bells. But here, in this pocket of silence and trash and moonlight, Jane could finally let herself fall apart. She pulled her knees to her chest and buried her face between them. How did I get here? The question was silent, asked only in her mind, but it echoed louder than the sirens outside, 8 hours earlier. The jury sat still, their faces unreadable behind courtroom shadows. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, their flicker unnoticed, by most, but unbearable to Jane. The courtroom smelled of stale paper and varnished wood. Everything felt artificial, too bright, too polished. Everything, except the storm rising inside her. She adjusted the lapel of her navy blazer and glanced at the prosecutor. He gave her a small nod, almost imperceptible, but enough to push her forward. With trembling hands, she reached for the microphone. "My name is not important," she began, voice low. "But today, I'm Jane. And I'm here because someone who told me he loved me broke me." A pause. A deep inhale. "I didn't come to ruin him. I came to remember who I used to be." For a moment, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Flashback, New York, 2023. It had been raining that night. Thick, slanted sheets that hammered the windows of the hotel room like war drums. The city below glimmered through the glass in streaks of gold and red. And Diddy was smiling, pacing, shirtless. "Let's watch it again," he said, holding the remote with the confidence of a man who thought he controlled the world. Jane sat still on the edge of the couch, her legs pressed, tightly together, hands locked. She knew what was coming. The footage, the first hotel night, the escort from Atlanta, Cabral, the drugs, the sounds of her own voice saying, "No," in a whisper too soft to stop anything. She had said yes later. Or maybe she hadn't said no. Again. The line blurred, and now he wanted to see it again. Not the memory, the proof. The prosecutor's voice brought her back to the present. "Jane, what happened after that night?" She turned to face the jury. "I lost my voice," she said. "Not literally, but I stopped hearing myself." Miami. A few days later, Diddy had flown them there, again. Same pattern, different city, same escort. This time, over candlelight at a rooftop dinner, he said he wanted part 2. She said nothing. She'd learned not to protest too loudly. Instead, she smiled, ate her food, laughed on cue. That's what survival looked like. Later that night, she stared at the ceiling in his penthouse as he made arrangements by phone. She heard her own name spoken like a possession. "Jane's in," he said. "She'll do it." She hadn't even spoken. Back in the courtroom, her voice grew more brittle. "He told me if I ever embarrassed him, it'd be the end. No more apartment, no more help, no more anything." She looked down. Her fingers gripped the edge of the witness stand until her knuckles whitened. "I didn't want to be homeless," she whispered. "So I kept doing things that made me hate myself." Text messages, October 15th. "Girl, stop. You know I need you," he wrote. I'm not an animal. I'm not a porn star, she replied. You tripping. I need you for real. 3 years of me having to fuck strangers. I'm tired. Every word was a rope tightening around her throat. Her voice cracked on the stand. I read those messages and I don't recognize myself. She blinked back tears, but one slipped down anyway. She wiped it fast, hoping the jury hadn't seen. I thought if I could just make him happy, maybe it would stop. Cut to a voice note. His voice, deep, low, sweet like honey laced with venom, filled her ear. I need you, girl. Just you. No strangers. Promise. But she had learned better than to believe promises dressed in warmth, the prosecutor asked, softly. What made you stay, Jane? She turned to the jury, her voice barely audible. Because no one else knew. Because I thought he was the only one who ever really saw me. And because when he left, I was nothing. The judge called for a recess. Jane stepped down from the stand, her heels echoing in the chamber like the footsteps of someone walking through memories they could not escape. Outside the courthouse, the sky had darkened. Rain was beginning to fall again. And somewhere in a corner of her mind, she was still hiding barefoot behind a concrete wall, whispering into the night, I just want it all to stop. The Miami night shimmered with a sickly kind of beauty. Jane sat by the window of Diddy's penthouse, her knees pulled to her chest, watching the city glitter like a lie. Below, the streets pulsed with life, cars, laughter, music thumping from beachside clubs. But up here, everything was silent. Too silent. Behind her, Diddy poured champagne into 2 glasses. The bubbles hissed like a warning. To us? He said, holding out a glass. Jane hesitated. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for it. To what version of us? She asked softly. He laughed, but the sound was hollow. The one that makes magic happen. She forced a smile and clinked her glass against his. The crystal rang, like a bell tolling in the distance. Back to the courtroom. Jane, tell us about that dinner in Miami. She inhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the edges of the stand. He was affectionate, charming. He kept calling me queen, saying I was his center. But it was always like that. Right before something dark. A pause. He wanted to watch the video again. From New York. The hotel night. Someone in the jury gasped quietly. Flashback. The rooftop. The wind carried the scent of ocean and gasoline. Diddy leaned in, his gold chain catching the light. You ever think about that night? He asked. Jane looked away. It changed me, she said, her voice like broken glass. It made me hollow. He smiled. I thought it was hot. She stared at him. I said I didn't want to do it. You did it, though, he shrugged. And now I want part 2. The prosecutor's voice was calm but probing. Did you consent to this second encounter? I didn't say no, Jane answered. But I didn't say yes either. I floated. Floated? Jane nodded slowly. That's what it felt like. I wasn't there, not really. My body was, but I wasn't. Atlanta escort Cabral arrived. The next day. Jane remembered how he smirked at her like they were co-stars in a movie neither of them had agreed to be in. Diddy watched them from the velvet couch, camera in hand. The lights were already set. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. His silence was command enough. Back to court, the prosecutor brought up Jane's text messages. She told Diddy, I'm not a porn star. I'm not an animal. He responded, You're tripping. I need you for real. And then, so we're breaking up? Jane began to cry again as she read her reply aloud. I'm tired. October 16th. He tried to reel her back. Let's spend the day. Just me and you. No strangers. But Jane had learned to read the language of predators. She told the jury. It was lovebombing. He'd pour it on thick, pretend to listen, act gentle, until he got what he wanted. Her fingers curled inward. Every time I pulled away, he'd throw money, promises, or guilt at me like chains. Then came the day she snapped. She texted, I'm not trying to fun-cheek strangers to fulfill your fetishes. You want me to do this while you run off with Gina? Diddy's response. You're tripping. Jane. I'm drained. Please leave me alone. Diddy. Gotcha. Then an hour later. I need you. For real. The jury watched her closely now, their eyes no longer passive. Did you believe him? The prosecutor asked. Jane looked at her lap. I always wanted to. But there was always another hotel night. The debt. The desperation. Jane testified that her apartment was barely furnished, that she had gone into debt trying to make it livable, that she asked him for help, financially. Can you communicate back? She wrote. Silence. Then finally he responded, not with comfort, but rage. Leave me the F alone. I need to chill. I'm single. The courtroom grew still. Jane's voice dropped. That's when I knew. I was disposable. October 24th. Good morning, she texted, trying to be normal. He replied like nothing had happened. She said, I feel violated and manipulated. This was a toxic-ass relationship. He snapped, You threatened me. Jane told the jury she had expressed frustration, pain, agony, but he twisted it, threatened to stop paying her rent. Her anger finally exploded in the messages. I'm not Gina. I'm not Cassie. I won't leave quietly. Don't play with me. The love contract. Honor the 2 years, she had written. He replied, You're fucking crazy. Everyone warned me. Her breath hitched. He told me we didn't have to do anything. We didn't want to do. She looked at the jury. But I always felt like I had to. The prosecutor asked, Did you feel safe? Jane didn't answer at first. Then, safe? I felt purchased. And then the threat. She read the message in a whisper. Stick to your word. I heard that evil coming out of you. She wiped her eyes. I told him I had PTSD from those hotel nights. Real PTSD. Diddy responded, You wanted those nights. You arranged them. You picked the escorts. Jane shook her head on the stand. I did. Sometimes, but only to avoid more strangers. It was my way of keeping some control, the I. Prosecutor stepped forward. And how did that make you feel? Jane's eyes closed, like a puppet pulling its own strings just to stop the burning. Her final message that week? I regret everything. Dark, toxic shit. Outside the courtroom, the sky had darkened, again like Miami, or New York, or Los Angeles. But this time, Jane wasn't running barefoot in the night. She was walking straight into the storm, eyes wide open. There are wounds that bleed, and there are wounds that whisper. Jane had long stopped bleeding, but the whispers, they never left. They crept in between silences, curled up in the hollow of her chest, whispered to her at night when the city outside fell asleep and her body still trembled at phantom touches. Courtroom, day 19. The prosecutor dimmed the screen. A soft click, and then the audio began to play. A voice filled the room, warm, syrupy, familiar. Diddy. I need you, girl, just you. Let's stop all the madness. Jane sat still, eyes fixed forward, jaw clenched. It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the tone, soft, pleading, like a man in love, like a lie dressed in tenderness. Flashback, October 20th, 2023. Jane had woken up early. The sun filtered through the blinds, laying soft gold across the hardwood floor. Her apartment was quiet, too quiet. Most of her furniture was still in boxes, a table without chairs, a bed without a frame. She looked around and whispered to herself, "I gave up everything for this?" That morning, she texted him, "Good morning. Can you help me with rent?" No reply. She stared at her phone, willing the screen to light up. She thought of all the hotel nights, the nights she had swallowed her dignity, her fear, her voice. The next day, she tried again. "Can you communicate back?" Still nothing. She felt like she was sinking in quicksand, reaching out, finding no grip. "I felt abandoned," she told the jury. "He was never too busy for freak-offs, but suddenly he was too busy for me." Later, Diddy did reply, not with help, not with apology, but with venom. "Leave me the F alone. I'm single." The jury shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor leaned forward. What did that feel like? Jane's lips trembled before the words came. "Like being thrown away by the man I kept breaking myself to please." October 24th. The shift. Jane and Diddy began texting again. Superficial greetings at first. "Good morning. Hope you're okay." The kind of things strangers say to avoid silence. But beneath the surface, the rage boiled. "Jane, I still feel violated and manipulated. I want the money." "Diddy, you threatened me." She stared at the screen in disbelief. "You threatened to cut off my rent?" she replied. "I didn't threaten. I begged. I broke." Courtroom. Jane looked directly at the jurors. "I wasn't begging to stay with him. I was begging to survive." The tipping point. Jane told the court that when Diddy refused to help, she reminded him of their love contract, a twisted agreement built on emotional dependency and hush money. He lashed back. "You're crazy. Everyone warned me about you." Jane's voice hardened. "I wasn't Cassie. I wasn't Gina. I wouldn't walk away quietly." A crack in the mask. Later, she told him, "Stick to your word. I heard that evil coming out of you." He replied with silence. Then something worse. He claimed that she wanted the hotel nights, that she orchestrated them, that she chose the escorts. Courtroom. Hush. The prosecutor pressed gently. "Did you?" Jane nodded once. "Yes, but not because I wanted to. Because it was the only way to avoid worse. A beat. I arranged the ones with people I knew. That way, I wouldn't have to touch strangers." Her voice faltered. "It was my way of trying to find control, inside a life that wasn't mine anymore." The betrayal deepens. Diddy cut contact. Weeks passed, but the manipulation didn't. He returned with a FaceTime call. Jane picked up. He looked tired, calm, calculating. "Charge me," he said. She blinked. "What?" "Send me the bill. Let's move on." Jane saw hope where there was none. "I thought it meant he was acknowledging the damage," she told the jury. "So I did what he said." She texted him, 15 months of rent. $100,000 for each year I gave up my life for you." His response? "F you. Don't ever text me again." The courtroom gasped. Jane wiped her eyes. Again. She took a breath, then continued. "He called me an opportunist, said I was using him. I told him, 'You broke me. You were a full-time job. You consumed my life.'" the darkest moment. Jane's voice dropped. I told him I wanted to die. The room went still. I texted, I'm going to kill myself. You all use me and break me. I want everything to go black. She sobbed softly. The prosecutor gave her a moment, then asked, What happened next? Jane looked up. He texted, Don't hurt yourself. I love you. And I replied, Nobody loves me. Silence. Then Jane whispered, He said, I will. Can you do the same for me? The courtroom air thickened, the kind of thick that suffocates, echoes of manipulation. Jane explained how he would jab at her emotional wounds only to act like the savior moments later. I told him, You're psychotic. You twist pain into promises. But she still picked up when he called, still replied when he messaged. Because I didn't know who I was without him. The prosecutor lowered his voice. Do you still love him? A pause. Then Jane said, No. But a part of me remembers when I did, and that part still grieves. Outside the courtroom, the sky split open with rain. But inside, Jane sat upright, eyes red but unwavering. She was still bleeding, but she was no longer silent. Glass can reflect, but sometimes it imprisons. Jane stood in front of the wide windows of her apartment, sunlight slicing through like knives. Her reflection stared back, eyes tired, lips trembling, a ghost of the woman she used to be. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, her phone lit up again. A message from him. Let's talk. She wanted to throw the phone. She wanted to scream. But she also wanted him to explain, to apologize, to pay what he owed. She opened the message. Stop drugging women. Let that end with me. Courtroom, the prosecutor pulled up a screenshot. Jane, what is this? Jane cleared her throat. It's what I sent him after I saw something online, something that shattered me. She didn't say exactly what it was. But she told the jury it mirrored everything she had been trying to escape. I told him to stop emotionally harming people. He replied, You're trying to set me up. The unraveling. That week, Jane's mind spiraled. She couldn't sleep. She felt the walls closing in. She had tried everything: anger, logic, silence, even kindness. But nothing worked. He was still circling her life like a shadow with claws. In another text, he asked, Are you dating? Jane told the court, It wasn't curiosity, it was control. I told him I felt like a side chick, a sex worker in my own relationship. The room stilled. I said it in plain words, because it was the truth. The prosecutor stepped forward. Jane, what did he say to that? She paused. He asked where his Christmas gift was. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Jane's jaw tightened. I told him I couldn't even afford gifts for my own child, the last olive branch. Jane messaged him again. I'm not the same person anymore. He didn't respond right away. So, she called. He didn't answer. Then he did. FaceTime. His face filled her screen. Familiar, disarming. He spoke softly. Charge me. 2 words that carried too much. He meant, name your price. Let's move on. Jane told the jury. So I did. She texted him, 15 months rent. $100,000 for each of the 3 years I gave you. I told him I had nothing left. No career, no savings, no dignity. His reply? You. Don't ever text me again. Jane looked at the jury. I told him he broke me, that he was a full-time job, that he consumed my life. I told him he was the opportunist. The death wish, and then came her most desperate text. I'm going to kill myself. You all use me and break me. I want everything to go black. In court, Jane stopped speaking. Her hands gripped the edges of the stand. Her shoulders shook. The prosecutor stood silent, letting the gravity settle. Later, Diddy texted, "Don't hurt yourself. I love you." She replied, "Nobody loves me." His next message chilled her blood. "I will. Can you do the same for me?" He kept twisting the pain, Jane said. He made it feel like I owed him something just for being alive. And then came the threat. One night, Diddy called. He was calm. Too calm. Jane could hear music in the background. It sounded like a party, but his voice was ice. "I'll show your baby's father the tapes," he said. Jane's blood froze. "Tapes of what?" The prosecutor asked. "Tapes of me. With the escorts. From the hotel nights." Jane looked down. "I was drugged during most of them." He had the recordings. Her voice cracked. "He said he'd send them to the father of my child if I didn't. Come to Miami to comfort him." The courtroom gasped. Jane shook her head. He wanted comfort. After the Cassie lawsuit. After the world saw the hallway beating video. I told him no. And that's when he threatened me. Desperation. Jane didn't know who to call. Who to trust. So she texted KK, Christina Carorum, Diddy's chief of staff, his shadow. His cleaner text on the courtroom screen, "KK, I wouldn't usually involve you in personal stuff, but he's threatening me. The tapes were filmed while I was heavily drugged. Please, talk some sense into him." Jane told the jury that. KK called her. She didn't deny anything. She just told me to stay calm. Said we needed space or we'd end up in a situation like this. Jane paused. I took that to mean, "Cassie, another lawsuit, another storm." The prosecutor circled back. "Did KK offer to help?" "No." "Did she deny the tapes existed?" "No." "Did she acknowledge the threat?" Jane nodded slowly. She didn't stop it. A woman, silenced. Again. Jane said after that, she went quiet. I stopped fighting. I started fading. Back to the present, her voice hardened. He said he'd destroy me. The prosecutor nodded. And did you believe him? Jane stared at the jury. Lived it. There is a cruel kind of irony in the way trauma dresses itself in celebration. Jane had always hated birthdays, not because of age or time, but because with Diddy, they were days drenched in manipulation. A facade of romance masking what was, always waiting beneath. Control, humiliation, and the loss of self. Courtroom. Day 19. The prosecutor adjusted his glasses and asked, Jane, can you tell us what happened on your birthday? Jane paused. I didn't want to celebrate it with him, she said. But I said yes. Her voice dropped. I always said yes when I wanted to say no. Flashback, February 2024. Jane received a message from Diddy. Sending you love. Had a dream about you. I miss my pretty smile. I forgot what it looks like. It was a line she had read before. Sweet, disarming, weaponized. She replied, put a smile on it. And just like that, the trap reset. He asked her about her birthday. Asked for a picture of her smile. Suggested they spend the day together. Jane didn't plan it. She didn't want it, but she agreed. I was still healing, she told the jury. Still trying to believe maybe he'd changed. The illusion of tenderness. That day, Diddy was different. He gave her flowers, held her hand, whispered promises. They had dinner, laughed, drank wine. She almost believed it, almost until the pills came out. Ecstasy? The prosecutor asked. Jane nodded. He always offered it like a gift. Said it made things better, I didn't want it, but I took it. And then he turned to her and asked, "Do you want to see Dawn?" Jane's stomach clenched. Dawn was a man. A former entertainer. Someone she had been with before, during one of the hotel nights. She remembered his hands. His breath. His silence. She did not want to see him again. But she said, "Okay." "I didn't agree because I wanted to," Jane explained. "I agreed because it felt easier than resisting. Familiar. A beat. Defeated." The room changed. Dawn was already there. He didn't speak. Jane said she took off her clothes. Diddy sat nearby, watching. "It was my birthday," she whispered. "And I had sex with someone I didn't love, while the man I once did watched and touched himself." Back in court, the prosecutor asked, "How did it feel afterwards?" Jane's eyes filled with tears. "I felt like a broken party favor. Used. And discarded." Then came Bear. Days later, Diddy found messages between Jane and a man named Bear, a friend who had sent her money. Diddy exploded. He accused her of betrayal. She tried to explain. That Bear had helped her during the silence. That she needed money to stay afloat. That it wasn't about love or sex. But Diddy didn't care. He texted, "You're making your own money. Hopefully we can have a clean break." Jane told the jury, "That's when I realized he only supported me if I was still under his control." The last request. Jane told him she needed 3 more months. Her rent was $10,000 a month. She needed time, stability, breathing room. But then she got a message. Not from him, from his accountant. "The lease is up in April." A short sentence, but it felt like a countdown, a noose tightening. "If Diddy was using his team to pressure me financially," she said, "then it wasn't just personal anymore. It was enterprise. It was calculated. And still, the checks came, despite the rage, despite the threats, despite the clean break. He kept paying her rent, and she kept answering his messages. Courtroom." The prosecutor paused, then asked quietly, "Why?" Jane looked straight ahead. "Because you can be a prisoner and still miss your cell." The courtroom remained silent, stunned. Jane took a breath and continued. But everything changed the day the raid happened. March 2024. Federal agents swarmed Diddy's properties. They knocked on Jane's door, too. Her world froze. "The first thing I did," she said, "I tried to call him. He didn't answer. She tried someone else. His team told her to contact his lawyer. She did. Then she got her own lawyer, also paid for by him, and eventually a new one, still paid by him. You see," she said to the jury, "even while under federal investigation, he still had his claws in me." Then came the extortion. The escort, Cabral, the one from New York and Miami, threatened to release a video. 35 minutes, Jane and Cabral. Filmed during one of the hotel nights. He wanted $10,000, or he would leak it. Jane called Diddy. She was crying. He said he'd handle it. She told the court, "I contacted Cabral, told him I wouldn't pay. I wouldn't be blackmailed." Then, weeks later, a media company reached out. They had the tape, and they wanted a comment, but the tape never surfaced. Jane still doesn't know why. "I don't know if Diddy paid him off," she said, "or if Cabral disappeared. But I lived in fear every single day." The prosecutor's voice lowered. "Was that the worst moment?" Jane shook her head. "No." She looked up, voice trembling but steady. "The worst moment was yet to come. There are nights that break you, and then there are nights that bury you." Jane had survived many things. but nothing prepared her for June 18th, 2024. Flashback. The apartment in Los Angeles. It began quietly. Too quietly. They had been drinking. Laughing. Pretending. Diddy poured her wine while jazz played softly in the background. The air smelled of incense and something chemical. Jane knew the rhythm by heart. Peace, then pressure, then pain. That night, she asked a question she'd been holding for months. Who was that girl in Utah? He looked up. What girl? The one from Instagram. The one with the anklet you bought me last year. Diddy's eyes narrowed. Jane continued, her voice sharper now. She looked 17. Silence. Then softly, too softly, he replied. You calling me a pedophile? Courtroom. Jane's hands shook on the witness stand. I didn't mean for it to explode. I had to say something. Back to that night. Jane stood, her heart pounding. You're sick, she snapped. You groom women. You break them. He rose from the couch slowly. You ungrateful he whispered. Jane hurled the wine glass against the wall. It shattered like her voice had for 3 years. Then she threw a candle, then a vase. I hate you, she screamed. Diddy lunged. He chased her. She ran through the hallway, slamming the guest room door behind her. He kicked it in. She ran to the bathroom. Locked it. He kicked that in, too. The closet door. Same fate. Jane described it like a horror movie unfolding in real time. I ran barefoot to the front door, but before I could get there, he kicked the back of my thigh and grabbed me by the neck. Courtroom reaction. Shock. Gasps. The prosecutor leaned in. What did he do then? Jane's eyes filled with tears. He dragged me by my hair, then by my arms, screaming that I was trying to take him away from his family, she said. She broke free once, ran barefoot down the sidewalk. 6 blocks, no shoes, no phone, just adrenaline. She hid behind a concrete wall, knees pulled tight to her chest, body bruised and mind shattered. I waited there for hours, she said, afraid he was still looking for me. Eventually, she made her way back, quietly, carefully, hoping he had left. But he hadn't. He was still there, Jane told the jury, like nothing had happened. She tried to make it to the guest room, but he chased her again. She locked the door. He kicked that one down, too. Desperate, Jane ran for the back patio. She turned, swung a fist. I punched him, in the temple. He didn't flinch. He punched her back, once in the forehead, once beneath her eye. She fell to the ground, curled into a ball. He kicked her ribs, her back. You're trying to ruin me, he screamed. You're trying to take me from my kids, Jane sobbed. I'm not, please stop. But the blows kept coming. Courtroom silence. A juror wiped her eye. Jane continued. He dragged me back inside, into the bedroom. Somehow she got a hold of his phone. She called the girl, the one from Utah. Was that you on the trip? Jane asked. The girl said something cruel. Jane couldn't remember what. She only remembered yelling into the phone. He's beating me right now! Diddy snatched the phone, ended the call, then FaceTimed his assistant. Tell her I was alone in Utah, he demanded. Proof. Always about proof, not truth. Jane said she finally escaped into the bathroom. She took a cold shower. When she looked in the mirror, she saw 2 massive lumps on her head. Her left eye had already begun to darken. She thought she was safe, until he followed her into the bathroom and slapped her. Once, twice, a 3rd time. Each slap knocked her down. She lay on the cold tile floor, her skin wet and stinging. He left. Then, returned, tossed her a towel. Put ice on that, then get dressed. She knew what he meant. Lingerie.courtroom. Jane's voice dropped to a whisper. I did as he asked, because I was scared he'd kill me. He turned on the TV, loaded a porn site, picked up her phone and messaged someone, Antoine, the escort from Vegas, from the hotel nights, from the shame. Hey, what are you doing? The message read. At first it was casual. Then Diddy saw something on Jane's phone, messages with Antoine from weeks before. He exploded. Open the gate, he ordered. Antoine arrived 20 minutes later. Jane, bruised and dazed, answered the door. Diddy told her to do her hair. Put on makeup, cover the bruises. You're not ruining my night, he said. Then he handed her a pill. She took it. Ecstasy. Again. Jane told the jury that she performed oral sex on Antoine, that Diddy watched, that she was the one who paid Antoine in cash, reimbursed later by Diddy's team. I wasn't a girlfriend, she said. I was a product in a system, an enterprise. Final note of the chapter. She finished the night in silence, lying next to the man who had beaten her, breathing next to the man who had broken her, and somewhere in the shadows of the room, her soul quietly packed its bags. Trauma does not whisper. It leaves claw marks. Jane had survived beatings, threats, manipulation. But what haunted her most was the silence afterward, the morning after, when everything looked normal, when she was still alive, but no longer. Living.courtroom, day 19. The prosecutor looked toward the jury. We are not finished yet, he turned to Jane. Let's talk about what happened after the assault. Jane took a breath, deep and trembling. Flashback, the morning after. Sunlight slanted through the blinds. Diddy was already awake, drinking a smoothie, scrolling his phone. Jane emerged from the guest room, her hair brushed, makeup covering the bruises. Good, he said. You look better. She said nothing. Inside, she was screaming. Courtroom. Jane spoke slowly. I didn't want to provoke him, so I became invisible. But then something shattered the illusion. A knock at the door. Urgent, rapid. It was one of Diddy's sons. He pushed open the door, eyes wide with panic. Something happened. Jane's stomach dropped. She grabbed her phone, and there it was. The video. The world had seen it now. The surveillance footage, Diddy assaulting Cassie in the hallway. Broadcasted, viral, unerasable. Diddy stared at the screen. His face went pale. They said he turned to stone, Jane recalled. Then chaos. His team arrived within the hour. Phones buzzed, lawyers called, crisis managers whispered. They began drafting the apology. Jane sat silently on the couch, watching. The machine move, he asked her, "What do you think of this version?" She read the statement. It was calculated, she told the jury. But good enough. She offered feedback, edits, reworded a few lines. He nodded, said thanks. But when the apology went public, it wasn't the version she had read. It was colder, sanitized, crafted by lawyers. The humanity had been stripped, she said. And so had I. Courtroom. The prosecutor asked, "Did you see him again after that day?" Jane nodded. Yes. Once. June 18th, 2024. The day of the assault. The day she ran barefoot into the night. The day she realized he would never change. In the weeks after, they barely spoke, but the tether hadn't been cut. Only frayed. She tried to rebuild her life, attended therapy, still paid for by him, blocked his number, then unblocked. Old habits die slowly, even if they kill you. The final act of cruelty. An escort named Cabral, again, contacted her, threatened her $10,000, or he would release a 35-minute video of her from the hotel night. Jane told the jury he said it had been recorded by mistake, that Diddy picked up Cabral's phone instead of his own. She called Diddy. I was sobbing. I begged him to help. He said he would, sent his lawyers, told her to relax, but the fear didn't leave. Later, a major media company contacted her. They had purchased the tape. They wanted comment. I couldn't breathe, Jane said. I thought it was over. Everything. My life. My dignity. But the tape never surfaced. To this day, she doesn't know why. Courtroom. Do you believe Diddy stopped it? Jane didn't answer right away. Then, I think he still wanted to own me, even if he didn't want me. Digital chains. Even while trying to sever ties, Jane was still in the system. His money paid for her therapist, her lawyer, her rent, and then something happened that ended everything. March 2024. The feds raided Diddy's homes, and they came to hers too. Knocked, entered, searched. That same day, Jane tried to call Diddy. No answer. She messaged one of his staff. They told her to call his lawyer. She did. He told her to remain calm, to say nothing. Later, she got her own lawyer, still paid for by Diddy. Even when the law showed up, she said, he still had his name on my life. And then came the final blow. In a last act of reclamation, Jane asked for peace. She texted, I pray for your healing. I pray for your peace. The courtroom was silent. Then the prosecutor asked, do you still fear him? Jane looked down, then looked up. Yes, but I fear losing myself more. She leaned into the mic. I was not a lover. I was not a partner. I was a prisoner. And finally, the jury understood. Not just what she had endured, but how long she had survived without anyone truly listening. Until now. Names carry power. For years, Jane had no name. Not in public, not in memory. Just Jane. Just a pseudonym. Just a placeholder for pain. But inside, beneath the bruises and silence and courtroom whispers, she remembered who she used to be. And now, at last, she would speak like someone who owned her story again. Courtroom. Day 19. Late afternoon. The light through the courtroom windows was softer now. Golden. Fading. Jane had sat on the stand for hours, her voice worn, her soul threadbare. But she was still upright. Still speaking. Still here. The prosecutor asked gently, do you want to stop? Jane looked at the jury. No, she said. I've been silent long enough. Final pieces of the puzzle. Diddy's team had tried to paint her as willing, as transactional, as someone who arranged the hotel nights, picked the escorts, cashed the checks. But Jane had one final truth. Yes, I picked some of the escorts. Yes, I arranged some of the nights. But not because I wanted to. I did it to stop worse from happening. I did it because I thought if I had some control, I wouldn't lose all of myself. The jury watched, breath held. Jane continued. It's not coercion when someone says no. It's coercion when someone believes saying no is dangerous. She paused. I lived in a house I didn't pay for. I slept in a bed I didn't choose. I kissed a man who called it love and watched as he destroyed everything inside me. She looked at the prosecutor. You asked me if I was consenting. I still don't know how to answer that. She turned to the jury. But I do know this. I never wanted to become what I became. The ripple effect. She spoke of therapy, of trying to parent while hiding her pain, of friends who stopped calling, of family who didn't ask questions, of walking through life like a hologram, and of moments, small, rare moments, when she thought she might one day feel clean again. The prosecutor showed the court one last piece of evidence, a recording from November 2023. Diddy's voice on the phone. "I thought it was something kinky we both enjoyed. I don't want you to feel this way. I just want to move on." Jane didn't know the call was being recorded, but it captured everything: the minimization, the manipulation, the mask. In court, Jane said, "He didn't care about what I felt. He cared about how I made him look." Final chapter of control. She described how his accountant messaged her about the lease ending, how she took it as a threat, a countdown, an expiration date. Even after everything, he still paid her rent. He still called. He still whispered, "I miss you." And she still wanted, desperately, for someone to say, "What happened to you matters." And now they had. The jury, the court, the world. In her final words, Jane looked into the cameras, the seats, the silence. "If there's anyone out there still trapped in the same kind of love I was in," she said, "please know this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not alone. I stayed because I thought I had to. I spoke because I finally realized I could." The courtroom stood still. The judge cleared his throat. The gavel did not fall, but something else did. The weight, the silence, the shame. Jane stepped down from the witness stand. She walked past Diddy. Didn't look at him, didn't flinch, just walked. And when she reached the exit, she stopped, lifted her chin, and for the first time in years, she said her real name. Soft, firm, unbreakable.